All right, hello everyone. So real quick right now, I'm just going to uh, show up how to make um, a timer for our code. You'll notice that there's extra stuff above and that way on the screen. I'm doing this in the middle of my kind of Saturday open tutoring sessions. No one's joining at the moment, so I figured I'd get some work done, get ahead of things. So I'm actually going to make that a little bit bigger, and I'll move this on top of that so you can see everything. Um, if anyone happens to join in, you'll see that there, but it's not going to be anything too crazy. What I'm going to do in this video is show you how to put in a timer into your um, code. So I've got this is the code from our last class that we put together. Why is that not showing up? The background should be black. Why is that weird? All right. Background, I set it to 0. And that's still being weird. You know what? We're just going to close that, and we're going to try that again. Editor.p5.js. Go to my sketches. Boom. Alright, I'm going to try that one more time. If it's still not working. Okay, now it's working. Not sure what that was about. So at the moment, we've got, I went a little bit ahead of just the day one stuff. So I've got a ball that's moving. That's it, nothing too crazy. I've got one paddle that, if you see here, it's following the mouse. Although actually, I don't think my mouse is being displayed at the moment. And then I've got some basic instructions. Don't actually just leave that there in yours. That's just something I put in as a placeholder to show that you need instructions in your code. A divider, and then another paddle that's not doing anything. What I'm going to put in now is a timer, so that way the game will automatically stop after a few minutes. All right. So to do that, we're going to need a few things. The first of which is just a few variables. All right, we need a total of 4 for this. These 4 variables, 2 of them we aren't going to give a value right away, and 2 of them we are. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start up with my code, and just right up at the top, I'm going to, is it going? Oh yeah. All right, sorry, I had a little technical difficulty here. I'm going to add these variables in just right here under my ball. So I'm going to say let, and I'm going to call this one time. I'm going to have another one called start time. All right, so I'm going to have that going here. We're going to be going up that way. We're going to give these values later, but we don't need to worry about that yet. All right, I'll get into that in a second. Start time. I'm looking at my teacher code to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. All right, so I've got those there. We're also going to need let one. I'm going to call timer is done. I'm going to assign that the value false. All right, because our timer is only not going to be done until it's all the numbers count down. So is the timer done? No. So false. And the last one I'm going to call total. Let total time. and I'll start with 60. All right, you got that there. This will essentially be the amount of time that we are doing here. That will be running for our timer. All right, so that's all that is right there. These are the variables you'll need for the timer portion. The rest of it is relatively simple, at least I feel, when I explain it. This will be some stuff we haven't done yet. We will be doing it not terribly long after this project, but it's a little bit of some new stuff. That's why I'm going through it specifically. So if I go down, make some space, this will be right after the end of the function. So you're going to want to go all the way to the bottom of your code after the draw function. You see there's the opening brace, the closing brace on line 39. You just want this to be somewhere completely different. I'm going to call this, I'm going to say function timer. So for this, we're actually making our own custom function. And we'll be doing this later on. So I'm not going to go too much into detail right now as to how this works. But we're going to need a few things. But we're going to be essentially encapsulating this timer in its own little function so we don't have to worry about it. All right. So what we're going to type in here, I'm just going to say time gets assigned. This is where a bunch of new stuff might start coming in. I'm going to say int, and that gets its own parentheses. Inside of these parentheses, we're going to add another set of parentheses just to help with some math, and that's going to be another function, milliseconds minus start time. All right, and then after those inner parentheses, we're going to say divided by 1,000. So we get this line right here. And what this is doing is we're saying that we're counting, essentially, this is the number of milliseconds that have passed since our sketch started. All right, a millisecond is 1,000th of a second. Okay, and so we want to get that to be just in seconds because no one's going to be counting that fast. So we have to divide the millisecond number by 1,000. And I'll get into why we have the minus start time in just a second. But once we start dividing that, we get a whole bunch of decimal points after the fact. So that's why we need the int function, integer, which essentially just takes a number with decimal points and chops off the decimal points. You don't have to worry about that. So, 6.4389 blah, 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 would just be 6. And that's what we're going to have there. The next thing we're going to need is a if statement. All right, and what that is going to say is if time is greater than total time, we're going to say timer is done, gets assigned true. All right. And then the very last thing we'll need is after the if statement, but before our final closing brace, is this new word, return time. And I'll get into why we need that, but essentially this will just be whenever we call the timer function, it's going to give us back whatever this number here is time. And then again, once it's done, we're going to set the timer to true. All right. So now what we're going to do is we've got this kind of basic thing happening here. We need a few more things in order to get this working just right. So we've got that there. I'm going to go back up to our draw function right here. Doesn't really matter where we go. I'm going to put this right above where we have the text. All right. This can be whatever. So we need essentially some kind of trigger to start our timer. That's kind of the next step. All right, so what we're going to do here, I'm going to use just a nested conditional. You can technically use whatever you want for your game. I just feel this will be a fairly easy one to do. So I'll say if, and I'll say key is pressed, and I'll say nest that if key code is equal to 32, so that's the space bar. Then we're going to say start time equals the current milliseconds. All right, so what this means, this is why we have that milliseconds minus start time here. The millisecond function is always going to be counting up the current amount of milliseconds from the time our code started. And it's always going to go. However, you're not going to be starting the game right when the code starts executing. It's going to take a second, even if it's just a little bit. So what we're going to be doing is the start time is the time that you're starting the timer. All right, so we're just going to be assigning start time whatever the current millisecond value number is from the time you trigger it, which in this case will be hitting that space bar. Down in our timer, we're then going to be counting the all the milliseconds past that start time. So since the millisecond function never stops, we need to essentially get rid of all of the time before you started counting. So that's why we're removing that amount from the milliseconds, and that is the amount of time that our timer has been going. And then we're just dividing that by 1,000 to go from milliseconds to normal seconds. And then once we get all of that worked out, we'll be switching timer is done to true. So when this number, because again, this number will be counting up continually, is bigger than our total time variable, which is 60 seconds. And in fact, I'll put a comment here. Game in seconds. Boom, got that right there. There we are. So once that's bigger than that, then our timer will, it'll flip this switch and timer is done. We'll go from false to true. All right, so we've got that there. We only have 2 more things we need. All right, so the first one is to just display our timer somewhere. And to do that, we can do text. So I'm going to go, the rest of the reason I put this right above the text here, because I'm putting all the text in the same spot. So text. All right, so again, just as a refresher for text, you need what you want to have displayed, what you where you want it. All right, so I'm going to say time left, something like that, and I'll make this a little fun, a little more graphically makes sense. So time left, colon, and then I put a space there just to make it look better. We can then add in variables in math and some values in order to display some numbers. And this will be the same kind of thing we do once we start putting the score on here. So I'm going to say, go after the quotation mark and say plus, and then we're going to do just a little bit of math. So we'll say the total time, again, that's that variable for this number up here, total time, 60 seconds. And we're going to say minus, and then we're going to be calling back the timer function. If you remember, the timer function is whenever we call it, it's returning out, it's giving us back the time, which is just this little math expression in seconds. It's a whole number, so we don't have to worry about a bunch of decimals popping up. And we can then say comma. So this element, all before that comma, that is what is getting displayed in the text function. The next thing we have to do is just tell it where to put the timer. You can pick wherever. I'm going to go in the bottom right corner, just for now. So let's say width minus 50, height minus 20. All right, not quite enough. Minus 80. There we are, that works. So you can see that popping up in that bottom right corner now. So now if I go over here, click on my canvas, hit that space bar, you'll notice that that timer is now counting down. Because the text is just displaying the result of this math with the variable in here. And since that is changing, it's now changing what's displayed in the text in that bottom right corner. Now we're almost there. I'm going to add one more thing just for a little bit of user friendliness. If we keep going, I'm just going to keep this up for the next 27, 28 seconds or so. You'll notice that there's going to be a problem with the timer as is. So again, we're going. Still got some time. I actually have my microphone here. It's not actually plugged in. It's a pain in the ass to put all the cables back after I moved it. So I have my microphone, but it may sound different today because I'm just using the built-in ones on my computer. All right, now we have got this going on. If you redirect your attention to the bottom, you'll notice that the time left has now gone to a negative number. We don't want that. You want the game to end when the timer hits 0. All right, and this is where getting some stuff called game states will be helpful. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but it's in this case, it's strictly related to the timer, so I want to bring that up. You'll have the essentially kind of 3 game states. The start, press spacebar to go. Cool. You'll have the, you're playing the game while the timer's going down, but then once you hit 0, you want it to end. So I'll go a little more into detail of this, but it's just going to be slightly different and a little more in-depth as we get going. So basically what I want to do is go in and kind of encapsulate some of this stuff inside of another if statement. So I'm going to go here around the part where it's drawing the balls and the paddles. So I'll say if, and then I'll just go ahead and I'll put it around here as well. Put it around the line. We're still getting an error because I haven't actually put anything in the if yet. So let's say, so if, let's say, I'll add one more variable here. Let game state equal 0. Boom. So if all right, so let's go here. Move this. All right, so actually going a little bit out of order. If game state equals 0, no stroke, because I didn't copy that, and boom. I'll have that there. Add a nested of and add this one back into here. Boom. And I'm just going to say game state gets assigned, or game state plus plus is shorter. All right. So now, if game state is equal to, and I don't have enough equal signs, is equal to 1. Now we're going to do all this. Right here. And actually, let me try to line some stuff up, make it a little prettier to look at so it's not as confusing, and then I will go through all of what I'm doing right here. So we have that there. I'm going to add in a nested of if, boom, 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 if, yeah, timer is done is equal to true. Then we'll have something else happen, but then game state plus plus. All right. So I'm going to move our instructions into here as well. I should say this isn't the instructions anymore. This is the timer text comment, and then this is the instructions. All right. So I know I've moved a bunch of stuff around real fast. So let me just tidy that up and say what I've gone through here. I guess technically we could make this a bunch of if, else, if. If, all right, else if, all right. So I've reordered a bunch of stuff here, and this is going to make things so we avoid these negative numbers. And actually in my little teacher cheat sheet code, I don't have this in there. So this has just been kind of going for the past 1,000 seconds, and I'm into major negative numbers. I realized you didn't. I pulled the code up, but you didn't actually see it because I've changed up my streaming layout. But that's okay. So at the top, we assign game state the value of 0 to start with. All right, so that's just an arbitrary number of 0. You could use strings. It could be whatever you want it to be, but it's a game state is equal to something, whatever you want it to start with. So whatever you want to have happen, in this case, it's the instructions. This is not good instructions. So let me change this to press the spacebar to play Pong. All right, cool. So we have that. That's what's happening here. Whatever you want to have happen before the game starts, it's going to live in this bit. The next thing we have to have is a test for moving to the next game state. It's kind of like the final part of this if. And I'm just going to put a space there just to help separate that. So we're going to be checking to see if the key is pressed and if we've pressed the space bar. And if so, we're going to start the timer. Because again, start time will get assigned the current millisecond value. And the last thing we're going to do is just increase the game state by 1. So it'll go from 0 to 1. So I do that. I hit the space bar. Things are here now. We can see that we've got the paddles. Something weird happened with the ball just now. I think it's, yeah, this is because it's not in the game state. I'm going to have to change, that'll change anyways later, but I'll put it in here for now. Just so the ball always starts in the same spot. So press the space bar. There, so now we've got everything we need to play the game is being displayed, but only when game state is equal to 1. And again, we started at 0. We added 1 to it on line 32 when we ran that test. And that's going to happen again. So the game is just going to go for these 60 seconds. All right. And I'm going to let the timer run out because it's only a minute. And all right, we're still just going. All right. So that's going right there. As we go through, you'll notice that the before the trigger for changing the states was if if the key is pressed and it's the space bar, then we're going to do the stuff. In this one, it's going to be if that timer is done is equal to true, and that just happened. because again, we're always checking to see what timer is done. And at the beginning, we set it to false. All right, so down here in the timer function, whenever that timer runs out, um, it gets set to true. And when it's set to true, you notice it goes away. And then we have that there. So we could say, just to put something there, text, and let's see, good game. Press enter to play again. And I'll put that at, just put that there for now. We're actually not seeing it at the moment, but that's fine. I'm just going to add one if key is pressed. Forgot my parentheses. Boop, or braces. If key is pressed, and then if key code is equal to, what was the enter key again? We can find out real quick if I just comment that and just do 13. So just remove that, uncomment this. That's not what I wanted to have happen. Uncomment that. Key code is equal to 13. Then we're going to go in and game state gets assigned or 0. All right, so now there's some other stuff that'll be involved, and I don't have all my braces lined up here. I think I'm one short. There we go. So we have all of that here. So I'll run through this one more time from beginning to end. One thing I want to point out is because we put our total time as a variable here, and we're using just total time later on just by the variable name. If you don't want your game to go on for 60 seconds, say you want it to be bigger or smaller, you can just change that variable value up here. For me, it's on line 10. And go that. So if I press the space bar, boop, it's going to go now. That ball is just going to go off into nether because it's nothing's happening. Logic-wise, we just have it moving. So we'll be adding in the logic later on. As we're going there, we've essentially got this big series of conditional statements going on, and I forgot that would do that. Going on. So we're basically referring back to the game state variable. It starts off at 0, and then we're saying if it's 0, we're going to have everything for that beginning state, and it's all going to be encapsulated in this if it is 0. As soon as it's not 0, the last part I should say, will be a test to move it to something else. You can have more complex tests by moving it to different places under different conditions. For now, we're just doing really basic ones of we're going from A to B to C, just down the line. So if you press the space bar at the beginning, then it starts the timer, moves the game state, and then the next thing is if it's equal to 1, then we're going to put everything we need right here. So everything for running the game is going to exist in this section right here. Moving the ball, having the ball bounce, the paddles, all of that is going to exist inside of this else if game state equals 1. At the end of that, we want to have that trigger again to move the game state to the next section. In this case, instead of hitting a button, the trigger is going to be if that timer is done. And again, because we set that to the timer is done variable to false, when it reaches a certain value, it'll flip that to true. So as soon as that's equal to true, we're going to just increase the game state again. And then we'll pretty much everything in this middle section will stop. And then whatever you want on the in this here will display. You could probably do something like also display like the player 1, player 2 score. But for now, I just have instructions for it to play again. So if you go in and press that enter key again, we've now reset the game state to 0, and that puts us back here. There's going to be a few little tweaks you'll have to add once we start getting in the scores and things. I'm not going to go into that now because we've essentially just reset the game back to the beginning, but we haven't changed any of the like the score values and things like that. And technically our game state, our timer is done, is still equal to true. So actually let's set that back. Let's change that before I leave it off, because right now we'll still get an error. So we'll say timer is done, cool. And then right here in if game state equals 0, we'll say right at the beginning, timer is done is equal to false. Boom. For the sake of this, I'm going to set that temporarily to 10. All right, press the spacebar. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we are. All right, cool. Press enter to play again. Cool. Press space to play Pong. And then we go back and the timer has reset. That was the last thing. We'll have similar things like that where a lot of our starting bits we'll put up in the game state right here, just so that when we reset it, everything gets reset back to the beginning. There's multiple ways to go about that, but this is probably the most straightforward right now. All right, so that sums up everything. This is a slightly longer video than I thought it would be at a half hour, including all the technical difficulties right at the beginning. So this is that. I'm going to copy all of this into a new code, so I don't know, because I forgot to duplicate this. File, new, okay, Hyper Dinosaur. All right, and then I'm just going to select all, paste this all in, and save, and I'll put this link to this in the video description down below. If you have any questions about any of that, just feel free to comment on any of this. Put a a question in Google Classroom. Send me something on Remind. Any way that I'll be able to see that, I will respond and get right back to you ASAP. All right, everyone have a great day, and I'll see you all the next time that I see you. Bye.